I had a client text me. They wanted to make sure if we could cover how can they use fair enough and that's fair. And that's what we're going to go over tomorrow. I have a lot of ideas on this one, but the tricky thing about teaching any kind of word usage is teaching it in this way is tough. Tomorrow it's going to go smooth whenever you're talking with a person, but I think the lecture style of thinking about a word's application and then teaching on YouTube or video, like it's so unnatural. I've done it before in the past because it's kind of what you have to do, but we're just spitballing here. So we're going to formulate our thoughts, formulate my thoughts, and instead of just like, okay, this is how you use it, the most important thing is having the conversation around the word usage. And like that's what I am hoping that I can really piece together here on Twitch, where the stakes are really, really low. So first of all, it's what I told them, that if you use fair enough and that's fair, I think there is a fluency factor to it. Like if I hear a non-native English speaker use those words, for me, and I do have like a little bit of a bias because I've been an ESL instructor, I would think, wow, they do sound fluent, or, oh, I wonder how they learned those phrases and those words, because these expressions were never words that I taught in my classrooms. The base idea of fair, sure, okay, equality, like you should know those words, but the expression itself, fair enough, and that's fair. But beyond that, now you need to start thinking about the context, and context is always king when you're using vocabulary words. So if you're going to use fair enough, if you're going to use that's fair, you're thinking in terms of agreeing or disagreeing. And are you conceding or are you actually acknowledging something? So let's break down those ideas. So conceding. I'm just typing the words again, but so let's say you're in a disagreement. Someone suggests something and you're not really fully on board with it, but you don't want to discuss it further. You don't really want to argue. The conversation's basically over. There's nothing else left to say. You can say, fair enough. That's fair. And it really has that tone. It's like, okay, I got you. Okay, we're done with this. Without getting heated, without really getting upset. Otherwise, if you're in agreeance, I don't think you would ever say fair enough if you are actually in agreeance. If you're acknowledging what they say, they come up with an idea that's better than yours. It's like, oh yeah, that's fair. Okay, oh, that's a good point, basically. That's kind of like your emotion and enthusiasm behind it. So if you think about it, those situations themselves are very, very limited because you got to look at your own personality, your own character. Are you someone who agrees out loud? Are you someone who disagrees out loud? Are you usually this type of person who pitches into a conversation in that way? Are you on the sidelines? Is this like a total non-issue with you? For some people, depending on their work, wow, there's a lot of collaboration. Wow, there's like a lot of team projects. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, agreeing, disagreeing. Then I bet you that you would probably hear this from your coworkers. But just because everyone else is using those words, that doesn't automatically mean that you have to use them. Like, this is where you really have to identify, are you in this kind of environment? No matter how fluent you might sound, if you use these expressions, like if you're not in that kind of workplace, if suddenly you bust out fair enough and that's fair, you see it on internet discussions, right? You see it on Reddit and that type of thing. Like, you could totally bypass all of that you know? And I'm just gonna make this note down here for the personality factor. Is this you? Yeah, if you would rather talk about other things, like if you never take sides, you really never have an opinion either way, then these are going to be kind of like useless expressions for you. So other things that you could say, that's a good point I mentioned over here. That's a good deal. This was suggested by someone else. I would actually take this out. Good deal. And then there's like, okay, we're done. But this is positive. Okay. Hey, did you take care of those reports? I did. I took care of them yesterday. Oh, good deal. It's like, you could even, it's kind of like a good job type of an idea. Not the exact translation there, but that's kind of like the sentiment that you're going for. Other things you could say, fair enough, that's fair. That's a good point, is kind of like where my mind is leaning towards. I mean, because instead of just having a stock phrase you would use, you would probably have questions, or you would counter with specifics, right? So they bring up something that you don't agree with, like you would say, well, how would this work in that situation? This is kind of tough if like we're making it really vague, but let's talk about an example. A wants to set deadline for this month. Okay, so there's a time crunch, you know, and maybe you push back, like, I don't think we can do it, and A says we need to do it because of whatever reason. Okay, fair enough. Okay, I got you. Like, we're just going to have to do it. Or, okay, that's fair because of the reason that you outlined. But if you're still trying to push back, it's like, well, how are we going to do this? Or there's no way we would be able to reach this deadline because of XYZ reason, right? You wouldn't just stick with those stock phrases. You would go at a different angle. That's that's probably how it's going to be when I talk with my client tomorrow. So kind of a jumbled mess in today's explanation, but any kind of vocabulary usage, you're going to be thinking through the same things. Like, sometimes there's a word that some of my clients want to use, and the fluency factor isn't there. Just because they use it, I don't think they would be a native speaker. Sometimes I think they would sound even worse. That happened last time when I was talking about formal English expressions. Sometimes you go too formal. It's like, wow, nobody talks that way. I don't know where you learned that word. Or maybe that was a word from a textbook 40 years ago and it's like really outdated. Maybe there's a very common situation. But again, if the situation is very limited, if it doesn't resonate with you, like, okay, wow, yeah, there's a lot of native speakers who use this word or talk this way, but that's just not your personality, you're going to sound even stranger using it. If something's really rude, something's like really impolite, man, like, yeah, maybe that sounds very, very fluent, but if you're not that kind of like rude asshole type of person, why would you start talking that way, right? Similar expressions, sometimes like you can find an easy substitute, but sometimes it's better worth your while looking into an alternative. Like, why do you even need to think about replacing these words specifically when you would probably take the conversation to a very different route altogether? You would be talking about something completely different, or there's more important things to address, right? Like, you don't even need to think about those vocabulary words. So those are your English considerations for this. And that's a wrap. Let's move on now to think about